Oh, well, so we keep getting more and more precise. I think like the extent that we are precise, I mean, we've gotten better and better over the course of years in the modern age and in this current century. We're getting down to, I believe, like mere seconds below
Mhm.
seconds, that possibility. So back in the day, it was we could see when that annularity or that totality was occurring, but as we know these orbits better and better, we're starting to get even better with learning these things. And it's the same sort of thing with tracking asteroids, for example.
Mhm.
The more we learn about these orbits, the more precise that we're getting, the better that we're able to figure out when they're going to be coming back when we have those things like close approaches. So it's a always a work in progress and always, I think, getting better and better and better.
Okay, so the moon moves between Earth and the sun all the time. So why don't we have more eclipses, or do we have eclipses all the time and we just can't see them?
So yeah, eclipses happen at a very particular phase, and that's when the moon is new. That's when the moon doesn't appear to have any light, but that's because the illuminated half is facing away from us, and when its shadow is falling in our direction. And that's then we expect maybe if they happen during a new phase for us always to have an eclipse during that time, but that's not quite the case because there's another piece to the puzzle. It's not a two-dimensional system, it's a three-dimensional system. And what's happening is we have our Earth and our Sun, those are in the plane of the solar system. So we have them orbiting at a very particular plane. And the moon's orbit is very close to that plane, but it's slightly inclined about 5 degrees relative to the plane of our solar system. And so there are very particular points where the moon's orbit intersects that plane. So if this was the plane, the moon's orbit, I'm sort of exaggerating it a little bit, but it would
Hmm.
orbit around, and there'd be a couple points where the moon would get into that orbital plane. And so this node, this orbital node where it intersects the plane, it migrates around the moon's orbit as it goes about its business, and occasionally that time it intersects the orbital plane will be the same time when we get a new moon. When that happens, that's when we experience an eclipse because it has to be a very precise alignment of the Earth, the moon, and the sun for us to get that shadow to fall very precisely on the planet. And sometimes it doesn't work 100%, like we get a partial solar eclipse, the moon only partly covers the sun in our view. And so there's different different levels of how precisely how full the shadow can end up falling on our planet, and that really depends on that perfection of that alignment of those three celestial bodies.
Okay, Eric, one more before we let you go temporarily because you will be back. Uh, the eclipse begins in about less than 2 minutes. The eclipse begins, so it takes approximately, well, a little over a minute now. It takes approximately an hour and 10 minutes before we hit peak annularity. Is that correct?
Right about. And so what's happening is the progression of the eclipse has to occur. And what that is the moon in our view, encroaching more and more upon the body of the sun. And so we start with a partial solar eclipse that becomes more and more powerful. We get the moon covering 20% of the sun, 40% of the sun. It keeps going up and up as these gears in the clock are very closely coming into alignment. And so, yeah, we do have a bit of time that it takes. And then all of a sudden, there is that point of angularity that occurs at a certain point on Earth, travels for a bit across our planet, and then heads out to the other side where partial solar eclipse will reoccur as that moon comes back off of the sun, and we see it move a little bit of ways, and it goes back onto its journey. We see them as being two separate objects, not in a dance any longer.
Okay, well, it has officially begun, Eric. So we're going to sit back, relax, and watch this happen. Thanks for joining us. And I know you'll be back just a bit to talk about all the other different kinds of eclipses. So have fun as the eclipse takes place. All right, coming up later,
So
we'll be
excited.
talking to Bernie Burns, founder of the internet video company Rooster Teeth. He's a huge eclipse fan. But coming up next, SLU's human spirit correspondent, Helen Avery, will tell us how eclipses have been viewed both literally and figuratively throughout history. Stay tuned. The eclipse has begun. Watch. Hey there, and welcome back. And how cool is that? As seen from our Chile observatory, the moon is making its way across the face of the sun. The eclipse has begun. The moment of annularity, peak annularity, happens again at 8:35 Eastern time. So an hour and 5 minutes, 4 minutes from now, we will see the actual ring of fire. Welcome back to slew.com, space for everyone. I'm Jerry, I'm your host, and happy to be with you and thrilled to be able to witness this. First time for me, too, folks. Now, solar eclipses are awe inspiring, so it's not surprising that they've popped up in beliefs and mythologies across time and around the globe through the millennia. And here to fill us in on some of the more spectacular tales is Slew's human spirit correspondent, Helen Avery. Helen, welcome, and check this out. I understand this is the first time you've witnessed anything like this, right?
Yeah, I have never seen a solar eclipse, not annular, not total. And so this is blowing my mind.
Yeah, this is all kinds of awesome. Well, listen, we heard from Paul what an eclipse actually is, what an annular eclipse is. But of course, for earlier civilizations, they would have seen this as something else entirely, wouldn't they?
Right. It's just sort of interesting to think that, we know what it is, and it's still weird for us. So people who didn't know what it was, you can just sort of imagine, they're walking along in their day and the sun never occurs at the same time as the moon. In fact, they didn't even know when they did see this that it was the sun and moon coming together. That came along much later. It was actually the Chinese astronomers who first sort of got their head around what it actually was. But before that, not even knowing, you just sort of suddenly, it's darkness in the middle of the day. You can imagine that it would have been very, very bewildering, not knowing what was happening.
Well, not just bewildering, but they must have been freaked out. They must have thought life was coming to an end.
Right, right. So, and understandably so, like ancient peoples, and even not that ancient, to be honest. Like, you think of the pagans in the Middle Ages. You were so connected with nature. What happens during eclipse? And I'm really hoping that we get a glimpse of this. Maybe Bernie can share it, or we'll see it on the feeds in Chile. That the birds fall silent. So imagine, you're living in a time where you're incredibly connected to nature. In fact, you're so connected that there is no separation. Like in some traditions, there aren't even words for wilderness or nature. It's just part of life. And then when part of that life suddenly sort of being that in tune, you hear the birds go silent and then darkness falls. You can't even look up because you go blind. So there's no way of you understanding what's happening. It's just suddenly dark in your day and this eerie quietness. It must have been mystical and, yeah, terrifying, absolutely terrifying.
Okay, so back then they're wandering around and all of a sudden the sun starts to disappear. And what did they think caused it?
Yeah, and it's so interesting, and it's similar to what we were talking about with lunar eclipses a couple of weeks ago, that you can look across the globe, across all different cultures, and they kind of saw the same thing, that the sun was being eaten by something. And here you can sort of see that, it looks like someone just took a lovely, perfect bite size out of the sun. But of course, it depended on your environment and your culture and your own mythology as to what you saw. So, for example, the Incas, and the same with the lunar eclipse, they saw a jaguar taking a bite out of the sun. That's what they believed. The Chinese saw a dragon. In Vietnam, it was a frog.
Oh, I'm sorry, a frog. Did you say frog?
A frog, a big frog, obviously.
Yeah, no kidding.
Then in Norse mythology, and the Vikings saw two wolves actually attacking the moon. In India, it was a demon, and in ancient Egypt, a snake. So yeah.
Okay. Well, that's perfectly understandable. I mean, I can't imagine what it would have been like, 1,000 years ago, not knowing what was going on. So how did they react? Was it a universal reaction, or what did they do? Did they try to stop it? I mean, how did that work, Helen?
Right. Yeah, again, it's like the lunar eclipse. And I guess if you think about it, a lunar eclipse is more frequent. And they thought, well, if it works on a lunar eclipse, or in their minds, it works when something's eating the moon, then maybe it'll work when something's eating the sun. So they applied the same tactics. And again, this was shared across the world. And that was shouting, banging drums, making as much noise as possible to scare away whatever it was that was eating the sun. So shooting arrows, throwing things at the dragon or the frog or whatever you saw, the wolf. That was the getting dogs to howl. That was another one. So just really trying to come together as a community and frighten away whatever it was that was threatening the sun.
Well, whatever they tried to do, they must have felt like it was working, because it takes, in this case, Helen, it takes about 2.5 hours for the moon to completely pass in front of the sun. So whatever they tried to do, whether it was shooting arrows up there, apparently they thought it worked, right?
Yeah, yeah, I guess. So, and it makes sense, you know, you do it long enough, and at the end you have a huge celebration because you won. It was you versus
Right.
the demon, and you managed to win the day.
Are there traditions dealing with eclipses that still exist today?
There are. It was interesting. So in India, it's seen as a time of fasting around an eclipse, because it's believed that during an eclipse, food and water will be poisoned. So you don't eat around an eclipse. And this is shared by the Navajo, actually. It's slightly different. They believe that the food and water consumed around an eclipse will put you out of balance. So again, some sort of native peoples don't eat or drink around the time of an eclipse. In some places, they shut their windows and just hide inside, pretend it never happened. Actually, there's a Muslim prayer that's recited for the eclipse on the day of a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse. So today, there'll be an extra prayer in the daily prayers of Muslims, because it was seen that the solar eclipse was a reminder of the Day of Judgment. So yeah, still going on today.
Do you imagine there are civilizations that still exist who still don't know what's happening when they see an eclipse?
Yeah, I would think so. And if they aren't, if they are more aware of it, then they're sticking with their traditions.
Hmm.
So, for example, and some of those are really positive. I mean, for me, an eclipse brings to mind coming together in community. So initially that was around coming together in your community to battle together as earth peoples, whatever was attacking the sun and therefore your life on earth. It was like a community event. And we still do that. We know what it is, but you know, you look at the people on the Chile feed, people coming together to witness this celestial event. So, but you know, I was reading that in Benin, Togo, in West Africa, the Bata Maliba people see the eclipse as the sun and the moon fighting together. And the only way you can stop it is if people on Earth are in peace. So today they sort of adhere to this story, and I don't know if I'm assuming they of course know that it's the moon in front of the sun. But today they adhere to this. So it's a tradition there that on this day you go around people you've, you know, done wrong, and you ask for their forgiveness, and you try and heal these heal these wounds rather, and make bonds so that you can bring an end to the eclipse, which I just love. And similarly, Aboriginal in Australia, the Aboriginal people see the sun and moon coming together as a marriage. They see, interestingly, the moon as a man and the sun as a woman, and they're coming together to sort of birth a new life. So yeah, you know, an interesting point. Well, I'm sure there are people who don't know exactly what this is and aren't tuning into SLU to hear what's going on exactly. But it's sort of it's interesting that these myths continue to this day, even though we do know what is going on.
Yeah, peace. What a radical concept, huh? All right,
Mm-hmm.
Helen, what is your take spiritually? I mean, people say that they feel an eclipse, even a partial eclipse, is a spiritual or a mystical experience. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to hearing what Dr. Kate Russo is going to say about this, because she has asked people who've experienced eclipses what their personal experience was. But in spiritual teaching, and I use that term very loosely, so there are some shamanic teachings, spiritual teachings, traditional wisdom teachings. The eclipse is a symbol of eternity, of our eternal nature. So the sun and the moon coming together is seen as like an alchemical marriage, and all sounds a bit weird, especially this early in the morning for us. But in those teachings, we exist on this material plane of opposites. So we have night, day, sun, moon, light, dark, good, evil, beauty, not beauty. And those teachings say that behind that the mind cannot grasp, is the sense that we are eternal, that we are one, that those opposites don't exist, or they sort of come together. And, you know, even science, we think about this like we're all made of atoms. It's just really our perspective about what these things are, and we put them into opposites. But during an eclipse, what's said to happen is that you begin to see in the material plane the coming together of the two. So night, it's not night or day, it's night and day. And that in that witnessing of an eclipse, part of you sort of shifts into this other reality of understanding the eternal nature and oneness of us all. And you know, I was reading Kate's book, Total Addiction, and she talks in it about some people come away from an eclipse and say that they lost their sense of self for that moment where they were looking up at the sky. So it's almost like, you know, if you're not into meditation and you're not into sort of studying these spiritual philosophical concepts, then go out and look at an eclipse and just see if at that moment the mind can't quite grasp what's going on, whether you slip into this realization that there is something beyond that, there is this eternalness, this eternal nature of ourselves and everything. So like many layers around eclipses, just so beautiful, this coming together as community, and but also this chance for self-realization.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to think of yourself as being really all that important when you look up and see something like this happening above you. All right, Helen, thank you so much as always, and we look forward to chatting with you a bit more later in the show. Enjoy the show, by the way, a first for you, as we know. All right, we're going to step aside for a few minutes and let you watch the eclipse as it takes place. We are, let's see, 50 minutes, 52 minutes away from peak annularity, which means that's when you'll see the actual ring of fire take place. Right now, the moon is making its way across the face of the sun. All right, enjoy the show. When we come back, Eric Edelman joins us once again, so don't go away. We've been all over the world chasing solar eclipses to share with you. This time, you're coming with us. Join SLU as we expedition to Stanley, Idaho to celebrate the transcontinental eclipse on August 21st. Sign up today at slu.com. Space is limited. And we welcome you back to our live presentation of the Southern Ring of Fire eclipse here on SLU, Space for Everyone. And you're looking right now at the sun and the moon making its way across the face of the sun, courtesy of our telescope in Chile, our observatory in Chile. And we're not finished. It's a partial eclipse, as you can plainly see, but we're far from finished because the show is only going to get better and better and better. And back again to tell us about what's happening, why, and what we can expect is our friend Eric Edelman, SLU astronomer. Okay, Eric, partial eclipse, that's what we have at the moment, but it's going to turn into a ring of fire, which is also called an annular eclipse. And for those of us people just tuning in, how about a tutorial? What is an annular eclipse?
Absolutely. But just first, before I speak to that, just looking at the images, the live imagery that we see here, the eclipse happening in real time, this celestial body covering another in our view, I just can't get over how cool it is. And as we're starting to see the moon covering the sun in our view, we're seeing maybe something a little interesting in terms of the sizes of the two bodies, at least as they appear to us, right? Because the moon looks sort of like, or the shadow of the moon, as we're sort of seeing this dark body cover the sun, looks to be about a very similar size as the sun does. And that's not in reality actually the case, because the sun is something like 864,000 miles across. If you put a tape measure on one side and went all the way to the other, you'd have to buy a couple tape measures to get to 864,000 miles, but you get there eventually. That's how sort of long estimated the sun is. And then we have the moon, which is more like 2,160 miles. And so that's not the same size. Certainly, it's not even close in anywhere the same ballpark of the same size. So why do these objects look similar in our sky? And that has to do with the amazing number 400. So if you divide the moon's length by the sun's length, you get close to the number 400. And in the same way, the distance the sun is from us, about 93 million miles, and the distance the moon is from us, on average, about 240,000 miles. If you divide the sun's distance by the moon distance, you get right around 400. The ratio between the distances and sizes stays very, very similar. So these objects look to be the same size in our sky, even though they are hugely, hugely different on that scale. But there's a little bit of a fine point here, where the moon doesn't orbit our planet in a perfect circle. Instead, what it does is it orbits our planet in an ellipse. That's sort of a stretched out rubber band-like shape. So there's certain points in the moon's orbit where it gets a little closer to us and looks a little bit larger in our sky. Sometimes also when it gets a little farther away from us and looks a little smaller in our sky. And so that right there is the crux of what can make an annular eclipse, because right now the moon is actually moving a little bit farther away from us. It's about 5 days away from being the farthest that it can be. So it looks a little bit smaller in our sky than it normally does. And so the moon and the sun have a very precise relationship in terms of distance, in terms of size. And so moving just a little bit can change that ratio just enough for the moon to not look big enough to perfectly cover the sun in our view. That is the case here today. So a total solar eclipse, the moon is close enough that it looks big enough to cover the sun. Annular solar eclipse, not quite big enough. So when it looks to be in the middle of the sun, in our view, there will still be a ring or an annulus that surrounds the sun that we can still see. And that's what makes it an annular solar eclipse. So, by the way, there's people talk about with a total solar eclipse that it's easy, that during that totality, that's when you don't have to use eye protection. Annular solar eclipse, that is not the case. There is no point in an annular solar eclipse where you can safely view that eclipse with your naked eye and still not have consequences for that occurrence. They're still part of the very, very bright sun that is not blocked in our view, so please don't hurt your eyes if you're anywhere nearby the path of annularity. If you're just looking through your screen here at SLU, no need to have eye protection. We're helping you through that. That's absolutely fine. But no, if you're looking out in nature with your eyes, please use appropriate eye protection. That's very important for an annular eclipse.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because Paul Cox is going to speak to that a bit later in the show. And by the way, if you're interested, you can buy solar eclipse glasses here at SLU.com. Hit the shop now button. All right, that plug is out of the way. It's also important to note, Eric, that this depends on where you live. Very specific places on planet Earth where you can see this particular eclipse.
Absolutely. This is the southern eclipse because it's going through places in South America, going across the Atlantic Ocean, in the middle of Africa. There's very particular places where you can either see that path of annularity. That's a very thin, long path, sort of looks like a bit of a snake that travels across our globe. And then you see a wider path that's sort of more rectangular, or that you can see sort of that partial solar eclipse. So geometry is very important when it comes to these eclipses because I was talking about earlier, it's the Earth or the moon's shadow falling along our Earth. And the moon actually has two different shadows that at least that we would like to concern ourselves with today. The sort of the deep shadow where you're getting in with the annularity, and then also the not quite so deep shadow where it's only partially covering the sun in our view. And so, oh, perfect. That map right there where the deepest shadow, that snaky line right in the center there, that's where you experience annularity. And then at the increasing distances away from annularity, or that path of annularity, you see a smaller and smaller percentage of a partial solar eclipse. So you might see, 80% coverage closer nearby, and then way, way far away near the edges, you see, 10 or 5% of the moon covering the sun, or coverage of the sun by the moon. And so, yeah, there you will see different parts of a partial or an annular eclipse depending on where you are currently located on Earth, or you could even see absolutely none of it. And those are places where the sun is down. You're definitely not going to see any part of the solar eclipse if the sun is not in your view. And also there are different places where just geometrically the shadow is not going to line up with your current position on Earth. The moon shadow does not completely cover our planet. It's a very subtle, precise event.
So as you can see on the screen, 39 minutes and counting to peak annularity. That's when we're going to see the actual ring of fire that we've been talking about. And yeah, you mentioned it, Eric. People in North America, for instance, are going to get shut out, which is why you should tune into SLU and keep it here, quite frankly. All right, so we've got several different types of eclipses. We've got annular, we've got partial, we've got complete total solar eclipses. Do some kinds of eclipses happen more often than others?
Certainly, yeah, you're going to get a partial eclipse more often. A partial eclipse is one where it doesn't quite hit the mark for completely covering the sun or getting into the moon doesn't completely cover the sun, doesn't go quite into the center of it in our view, whether it is large or smaller than necessary, whether it would become a total or an annular eclipse, doesn't quite completely move into the center of the surface of the sun. So those are the ones that happen most frequently. Then following that scale, the next ones that happen the second most frequently would be the annular solar eclipse and the total solar eclipses. Those can happen, once every couple of years, once every 1 year, something like that. And then we have the rarest ones. Those are the hybrid solar eclipses, where on certain parts of the globe, you'll get an annular solar eclipse. Other parts of the globe, you'll get a total solar eclipse. Those are the very rarest. Those happen. It varies, but on average, maybe about once a decade. So those are the most difficult to catch. But yeah, for example, I think we're having this year, we have one annular solar eclipse. We're going to have also one total solar eclipse coming up in the summer. Very exciting, the transcontinental eclipse. Then also next year, we're going to have 3 solar eclipses, and all 3 of them will be partial. So you get a variety, but yes, certain ones are certainly more common than others.
So let me ask you, Eric, how many have you actually witnessed firsthand, and what kinds have you seen?
Just one. And it's this type.
Oh,
I got the amazing opportunity to go on an eclipse expedition with Dr. Jay Paskoff and the Williams College expedition team when they went over to New Mexico to actually the Jansky Very Large Array. So the contact, the telescope in contact, where we were right there by the dishes while we looked at an annular solar eclipse occurring in real time. That was the first time I saw it. I believe it's in 2012. And really, I think the story of eclipses just stays with you. That's why I'm so excited to see this annular solar eclipse happen again, because I have a very personal investment in annular solar eclipses. That's the one eclipse that I've witnessed, that I've experienced, and I know everybody really talks about those total solar eclipses, but for me, thus far, it's been my top experience. It's been the most amazing, celestial event that I've ever seen in the sky, and so I really enjoy seeing it. That ring of fire, it's absolutely a sight to behold. I know I'm sort of the opposite end of what you've witnessed, right? That you haven't seen an annularity, but you've seen a total solar
yeah,
eclipse. Is that
yeah,
right?
yeah. I have. It was pretty neat, and but I was ready for it. I didn't go screaming into the woods or anything,
Why
and
not?
it's because I have television and I watch it. Uh, uh, so, did you wear your glasses in New Mexico? Your eclipse glasses?
Absolutely. Proper eye protection. You want, and not just sunglasses. You can't just wear sunglasses and look up at the eclipse and expect to be okay. There's very particular filters that you need to make sure you're blocking out that light from the sun. Like I hope that you don't go around day to day, anybody that's watching, and just with your sunglasses on looking toward the sun. That's not a good thing to do. For eye protection, there's a couple things you can do. Number 14 welder's glass, that's great. I think SLU has some options. If you get them from people that know what they're doing, like SLU, you can make sure that your eyes are protected. And also, one thing that I was doing during the annular solar eclipse, which is a lot of fun, if you raise your kitchen, if you get a cheese grater or a colander, and you hold it up to the sun, then you look at the shadows coming through the grater, and then you're going to start to see bites into a little bit of shadow bites into the holes that are being the reflection or the projections that are coming through that grater. And so you'll gradually see that eclipse occur in shadows, just that you can project on your own, which is an easy way to do things if you don't have the proper equipment yourself. So yeah, looking through holes in trees and graters, it's all good.
Okay, cool. Good to hear. Good to keep in mind. All right, one final thing, Eric, before we let you go. Um, when you saw the eclipse in New Mexico, listen, I know you're a scientist and everything, but did it move you spiritually in any way?
So I was listening to Helen Avery's segment just a little earlier, and it is, I mean, it's something that really, I don't know, it puts a pause on your life, at least in my perspective. Something that, you go about your everyday thing, you do a lot of, oh, I just see the feed change there. It looks absolutely
Yeah.
lovely. But you go about your everyday business, you're going about your life, and then you see an astronomical event like this where sort of day and night, the standard sort of motions of the planet and what you're used to witnessing, they change for a second, and it's something that it seems that in a way maybe a little bit greater than you, that you're seeing something that you really just got to take stock of. You got to pause yourself, take a hold of it, and it's something that sticks with you, and so it's something that I will, I think, keep this story with me for a long, long time. The time that I witnessed the eclipse, and the group feeling. I was with an expedition team where all together we were trying to struggle through a bank of clouds to see it happen, and
Mhm.
it was exciting to just have this opportunity to see the universe in motion. It was an absolutely incredible experience. So yes, it was very, very moving, and I love to see the sun look more and more like Pac-Man here. It's so exciting to see that progression.
Bringing it all back into perspective. All right, Eric Edelman, thanks a million. We'll check back with you again later on.
Thanks again. Have fun, Jerry.
Yeah, I will. All right, coming up on the show, there's a new slew on the way, and we'll be joined by Slew's founder and CEO, Mike Paolucci, to tell us all about what's coming up. And later, Rooster Teeth founder Bernie Burns will join us. And on the other side of this break, I will chat with Daniela Fernandez, who is witnessing the eclipse firsthand in Chile. So stay with us. Enjoy. We're excited to announce the release of our first book, The Saturn Above It, an anthology of short fiction about space. Available now at slew.com. Hi, welcome back. Look at that spectacular shot of this eclipse in motion, our Southern Ring of Fire presentation here on SLU, Space for Everyone. I'm Jerry Monter. I'm so happy you could join us for this annular solar eclipse, and we are 29 minutes away from peak annularity, which means 29 minutes away from actually seeing the Ring of Fire itself. We've been watching this eclipse thanks to our feed partners in a couple of areas in South America, but our big feed, the major one, the one that's going to show us that brilliant moment of annularity from Chile, is being manned by Daniela Fernandez. And she is here to talk to us about the experience of watching the eclipse in person. And Daniela, welcome. How are you?
Hi there, how are you? I'm fine.
Are you looking forward to this? You must be very, very excited about what's about to happen.
Yes, it is, totally.
Daniela, tell us, what is your job? What exactly do you do there?
Here in the solar eclipse.
Yes, what is your job there in Chile? What are you doing for us?
Oh, well, we are here with my team. I work in the Catholic University in Santiago in the observatory, and SLU is part of our observatory. And now the idea is to be here in Coyhaique because we have a annular eclipse, so it's the best option here in Chile. And well, the idea was have everything prepared and show all the people this phenomenal, excellent phenomenon we're having here in Chile.
So this is the perfect place to be at this moment to see this annular or Ring of Fire eclipse. Daniela, how many eclipses have you seen in person?
I think this is my second one. The first one was when I was child. I don't remember when, but it was in an airplane. So it was really funny because I have my radiography and I was seeing it in an airplane. So it was really funny. But this experience is the most beautiful one, of course.
Are you going to wear glasses to look at it?
Yes, we have glasses. We have a lot of astronomy activities here in Coyhaique, so they made glasses for all the people here. So we have our ones, but I'm totally focused on the streaming. So just be here a little bit and there a little bit.
I know you're working for us as well as enjoying the eclipse. Are you able to work and still enjoy the eclipse at the same time, Daniela?
Of course, always. We can do everything. I have a great team. No, I don't know if you can see it here. We have the telescope, and now my team is walking here, seeing the eclipse. Maybe it's there. Carlos is my partner. So we have everything under control.
There's Carlos. Hi, Carlos. Good to see you. Well, it's fantastic work so far. The pictures are absolutely gorgeous, and I want you to put on your glasses and in 25 minutes enjoy the Ring of Fire. Daniela, thank you.
Super. You're welcome. See you later.
All right. Daniela Fernandez from Chile. She'll be joining us more often here on SLU to handle Spanish language programming for our viewers and subscribers in Latin America and other Spanish-speaking regions. So we thank her for all of her hard work, and I hope she enjoys it as much as we do. Coming up, there's a new SLU on the way in just a few days. We'll sit down with SLU's founder, Mike Paolucci, to talk all about the incredible new features. And later on, we'll be reaching the moment of annularity. Again, that happens at 8:35 Eastern Time in Chile. And we'll have Rooster Teeth founder Bernie Burns on to talk about his personal love for space. But now, more of the Ring of Fire eclipse. Enjoy. Give the gift of the universe. Give the gift of SLU. A celebration of every magical moment in the night sky. For just $60, you can give the budding space explorer in your life the gift of a full year of SLU membership. It's available now at slu.com. And welcome back. It's the Southern Ring of Fire eclipse here on SLU, space for everyone. We're getting ever closer. The moment of peak annularity now just a little over 15 minutes away. That's when the Ring of Fire is actually visible. And SLU has been around for a while now. It's been evolving the whole time. The newest version of SLU is on its way in just days, and it is better than ever. Here to give us a bit of a preview and to talk about the journey SLU has been on up to this point is our founder and CEO, Mike Paolucci. Mike, first of all, boss, I got to tell you, I'm literally on the edge of my seat waiting for this to happen. This is absolutely incredible. I've seen a total eclipse, but I've never seen the Ring of Fire. Have you?
Hey, good morning, Jerry. No, I have never seen one myself in person. So, as a matter of fact, Paul Cox is the guy at our company who gets to go and travel and see all the good stuff. But this August, we're all going to go together and be there in Stanley, Idaho to witness it in person. And of course, we're trying to get the entire community to come with us for the first time. So it's going to be a large campsite. That'll be something like a Woodstock meets Burning Man for up to several thousand people, where we're going to broadcast live, similar to this scene you see right here, people gathering down in Chile. So it's a very exciting series of months coming up, and a very exciting series of minutes here as we wait for annularity.
So, Mike, tell people out there in SLU land how they can join us if they want to in Idaho.
So when we relaunched the new website, which is about a week or two away, and something we've been working on, well, for 12 years we've been building up to this. For the last 15 months, all of the people involved in SLU have been reconstructing the front end of the experience. And when we release that to the public, in it will be all of the information about the eclipse where you can sign up. It's no additional cost to come, very much in the spirit of SLU, space for everyone. As long as you're a member of SLU one way or another, you can join us for free. Bring your RV, bring your camping gear, join us in the great outdoors in the shadow of the Sawtooth Mountains, and let's have a party.
Oh, now we're talking. All right. Speaking of the website, Mike, what are the biggest differences that people are going to notice right away?
Well, it's going to be a dramatic difference. We've actually never really invested in the front end experience for people. We've applied all of our resources to building up this telescope network and operating these telescopes autonomously from all over the world. And now we actually have the world-class front end to go with it. And you'll just see from the customization of it, it's actually built in our own platform. Every detail of it was laid out by us with no limitations based on certain kinds of software. We laid it out in a very curated manner so that really anybody, any novice, all the way up to an expert, can find their way and flow through this experience. As you know, SLU is all about the socialization of doing this with other people. You're never alone at SLU, and the website accentuates that. So it's all about, really a social platform to gather people and looking up at the night sky together, as we are doing now, looking at annularity about to happen with, millions of people around the world. So too, that happens every day at SLU. The way the telescopes operate, sort of like a jukebox. One member's in control, but every other member gets to look through the telescope with them, share their thoughts about it. We're a very open-minded community. It's all about really any diverse perspective about what is out there. We try to encourage people to share. The science certainly is foremost, but also the art and culture, what we call the human spirit. It's almost like an anthropological record of all the things humans have ever believed in looking up. And of course, do it yourself, how people actually go out, like these folks down in Chile are doing right now, to capture it for themselves.
Yeah, somehow, Mike, I knew you were going to be a pretty good spokesperson for this. And one of the most important things I need to ask you is, when it comes to the new website, how user-friendly is it going to be? In other words, can a numbskull like me enjoy myself?
That's right, Jerry. It's designed for guys like you and I. That's obviously, easier said than done, because the night sky is so complicated and dynamic, and getting all this equipment to operate and figuring out, what are the objects that are most interesting to see, and then curating all this information we have about all those objects, helping people build their mind's eye. We are excited to release what we call the SLU 500, which are the top 500 objects in the night sky, the most interesting, the best looking through our telescopes, the one that there's all kinds of folklore and mythology and a lot of science about them. So the interface is all about making it easy for lay people to come in and experience those SLU 500. But if you're hardcore and you want to make your way to becoming a SLU astronomer, you can point the telescope anywhere you want in the night sky, and you can discover supernova and track comets and asteroids, and our members are doing that every night for 12 years. So it's all about that progression, and that includes a free tier, which, for the first time, there's something for you to do at SLU without paying. You can just come in and hang out and contribute your thoughts about the things you're seeing and be a part of our community. And at some point, you'll be ready to look through the telescopes, and you have to pay for that. But, at $5 a month, you really can't beat it.
So it's going to be a hell of a year, Mike. And when does the new site launch exactly?
Well, you'd have to talk to our engineers about that, but we like to say, by winter's last waxing crescent moon. So I've given them a little window, and I think that's around March 5th would be technically the last day of that. So let's hope the boys can bring it home.
All right, Mike, we are less than 10 minutes away from peak annularity. Enjoy the show. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jerry. Take care.
All right, SLU founder and CEO Mike Bellucci, the boss here at SLU. Coming up next, we'll be talking to Bernie Burns, founder of the internet video company Rooster Teeth. We'll be talking to him about his personal passion for space, and we'll be reaching peak eclipse during our conversation with Bernie, so stick around. You don't want to miss that. Stay with us. We've been all over the world chasing solar eclipses to share with you. This time, you're coming with us. Join SLU as we expedition to Stanley, Idaho to celebrate the transcontinental eclipse on August 21st. Sign up today at slu.com. Space is limited. Hey there, welcome back. As you can plainly see now, we are about 4.5 minutes away from the moment of annularity. That's when we actually see the ring of fire. For the special event, we want to bring on a very special guest. Bernie Burns is the founder of Rooster Teeth and a world traveler. He was even the runner-up on the 28th season of The Amazing Race. And Bernie, welcome aboard. Have you witnessed a ring of fire eclipse before?
No, I have never witnessed that. Never. I've seen a few in my lifetime, a few lunar eclipses, but solar eclipses are not something that I experience very often.
When you say you witnessed a couple of full eclipses, total eclipses, did you travel to see them?
No, I was going to say that I've seen some lunar eclipses, but never really any solar eclipses before. So it's something that I've always wanted to experience, and I actually thought about going down to Chile for this one this year.
You thought about it, but why didn't you go?
Because I have to be somewhere on Monday. So unfortunately, when the opportunity came up, I already had something booked for Monday. So it's one of those things when you travel, getting your schedule all lined up can be a little difficult sometimes.
How
about you? Do you travel on a regular basis to do these things?
No, I didn't have to travel to see the first one. I've seen a total solar eclipse. I didn't have to travel for that one. This is the first time I've ever witnessed anything like this, and I wish I was there in person. I really do. I really do.
I know.
So give me your impression of the feed that you're looking at right now.
Well, it's really cool to be able to see this live because I don't feel like I've ever seen it live before. And I was listening to you all talk with the founder in the segment before this, and I live in Austin, Texas. And Austin had a really dubious distinction for a long time. It was the largest city in the United States that did not have a planetarium. And so we had some observatories like at the University of Texas, but not a full-fledged planetarium, which was, I just think, a horrible thing. We now do have a planetarium, but it's really cool because there's no service like SLU at the time where you can like get online, see other people's telescopes, just have this huge network of astronomers all over the globe. So this is a cool thing for me to discover.
And just to let you know, Bernie, we're a little over 2 minutes away from peak annularity. As soon as that happens, we're gonna break away for just a second so we can enjoy it. So I just want to let you know that's going to happen. So you're heavily into space and science, is that correct?
Well, I grew up in a very scientific family. My father we only have 2 minutes, so I can't explain all of it. He was a Catholic priest who had a number of degrees in science, in biology and chemistry and physics, and then masters in chemistry and biology as well. So they always fostered any interest that I had, in science. And as a kid growing up in the Star Wars era, a lot of it tended towards space. And then in the 80s, during the heyday of the shuttle program. So my dad always fostered that interest. He actually took a turn later in his career where he worked on the Super Collider in Texas. So he kind of went the other direction. Instead of going out into the unlimited vastness of the universe, he was focusing more down on the subatomic level.
I've asked every one of our guests so far, with the exception of Mike Palucci, our boss. I've asked everyone what they think of when they see an eclipse. Does it do anything for you? Does it touch you somehow spiritually, Bernie?
Well, I think what it does to me is I tend to think of, the knowledge we have now as a civilization versus, in previous centuries. And what did other people think when they saw this? What did it mean to them and how did they explain it? We know why it happens. But, if you were experiencing this for the first time, you just happened to be in Chile, and if this was taking place and we didn't have this knowledge, what would it mean to you? What was the impact it would have on you? So, and I don't know, I get a little wrapped up in that, honestly.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do. I don't think there's a way or a moment that you can actually look at something like this and not be affected by it.
Yeah, and it's like, you think about, cultures and things when they see this as some kind of spiritual sign, and it could actually lead. It's one of these things that takes place in the universe. That's a very natural thing that when it happens, and it's the human reaction to it, which can lead to negative consequences, and I think we deal with that now with a lot of other things with science, and the way we try to approach or regulate science it's just the human being's reaction to it. Look at this. It's coming around right now.
Yeah, this is it. Peak annularity. We're looking at it right now, Bernie. This is the actual ring of fire that we've been looking forward to. As you can plainly see, the shadow of the moon does not completely cover the sun, and that's the effect that we get, the halo, if you will, the ring of fire. It's magnificent. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a screenshot of this because I want to keep it, at least for posterity, on my desktop. That's awesome.
And it's not going to last very long.
No, it's not. Just a few seconds, and then it moves off to the left, at least here. In other parts of the world, the angle's different, but this is what it looks like from our observatory in Chile.
Wow, look at that.
Just incredible, and you can just imagine how ancient civilizations reacted when they saw something like this.
Yo, can't even begin to imagine, especially if they were, right in the center of the event. There it goes.
And there's your ring of fire, folks, right there.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Hard to believe that's our sun that we see every day. It's so interesting to see something from a totally new perspective. Look at that.
That is mind-boggling. Holy cow.
It really is. I mean, there's so many things there too. It's like just even the size of the two objects versus their distance in space from us that we can see something like that. It's like, what needs to take place in order for that to happen?
Yeah, not only that, you have to be in the right location. We've been talking about this. People in North America get shut out. People in North Asia, Russia, they have no chance of seeing this. Later, we'll have a feed from Angola. Angola is right in the path. And oh man, that's just. I'm sorry. I'm speechless.
I know. It's just amazing to see these massive bodies, moving across each other like this, and it's just like you get this tiny little ring. I'm just fascinated by, the way these celestial bodies formed, and then how just the coincidence that would take for them to be the size that they are, the distance they are from us, to be able to create something like this. To me, it's just absolutely fascinating.
Your company, Rooster Teeth, you've done some science fiction projects. How do you feel?
Correct.
Science and science fiction. Science and science fiction, how do they inform and inspire each other?
Well, I think I want to point out that Rooster Teeth focuses more on the fiction than the science part of it. We're not known for being science experts at Rooster Teeth, and I wouldn't want to pose this one for sure. But I don't know. I just feel like since we make content for the internet, I feel like that's where a lot of people who are interested in science and science fiction, that's where they are, especially when we started back in 2003. The early adopters of the internet are people who wanted to watch video online before anybody else. Those tend to be, the people that grew up watching Star Wars, that were upset that Firefly was canceled. And those are the kind of people that we were. And so we were just making content that we wanted to see. And so we were making science fiction content. But I think science fiction is ambitious. It's inspiring. It talks about things and introduces scientific concepts to young minds. I just think science fiction is an absolutely critical part of the entertainment landscape, and science fiction doesn't always necessarily get, I think, the credit it deserves. I was happy to see that Arrival was nominated for an Oscar, but typically that kind of thing doesn't happen.
I actually watched Arrival the other day, and the person I watched it with, I mean, we talked for an hour after watching that movie about what it meant. It fascinates me as well. Speaking of the internet, what role do you think the internet plays in bringing people together to, well, for instance, experience things like this?
Well, I mean, this network is amazing. I mean, if you think about our lives before the internet, the way that we would experience this event is we would probably have, local news coverage of, our angle of the solar eclipse, which we probably wouldn't see anything from it from where I am, or we would have live coverage that we would have to get up in the morning, tune into one specific channel and watch it. And the internet just makes the consumption and the sharing of information so much easier. And it's one of those technologies. I'm talking about information technologies with the internet. It's one of those technologies, like gateway technology. Now that we have that, everything else becomes accelerated as a result of it.
We just saw a shot from one of our observatories in Argentina. Now we're back to Chile. We got a total eclipse coming up in August 21st. Bernie, you going to join us in Idaho for that one?
Yeah, I saw right before we started talking. I love the at the end it says space is limited, which I thought was like a funny thing to tack on to the end of a slew advertisements. That space is limited. It's like that's what we deal with here on Earth with logistics, but space is not quite limited in other ways. I'm very excited about that. We have friends. We've been planning what we're going to do for that. We've gotten the maps of the pathway across the continental U.S. And like I said, I had never personally witnessed a solar eclipse before. This is the first time I've seen the Ring of Fire like that, and I'm dying to go. I want to be there and I want to see it in person.
Space may be limited, but not for you, Bernie. There's plenty of room for you in Idaho. So please join us. It'd be a blast.
Well, I would hate when somebody doesn't get a spot. That now they know who to blame. Oh, look at that! That's fantastic.
Yeah, there's the shot from our Argentina observatory, the Ring of Fire. Hey, Bernie, we're going to let you go. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been fun.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Bernie Burns, founder of Rooster Teeth. And coming up on the show, a solar eclipse has been known to elicit strong reactions from those there to witness it. And we'll be speaking to psychologist Dr. Kate Russo about why that is. And later on, if you're interested in seeing an eclipse for yourself, well, you're going to have to prepare. And Paul Cox will be back to explain what you might need, what you will need. Don't go away. Give the gift of the universe. Give the gift of SLU. A celebration of every magical moment in the night sky. For just $60, you can give the budding space explorer in your life the gift of a full year of SLU membership. It's available now at slu.com. And we welcome you back to the Southern Ring of Fire eclipse here on SLU. We saw the moment of maximum annularity, the maximum eclipse for today's event just a few minutes ago. Now you're seeing the moon as it passes past the sun. We saw the Ring of Fire a few minutes ago. That brilliant ring. Now, total solar eclipses like the one coming up in 6 months are even more spectacular. In fact, longtime SLU viewers will remember that our own SLU astronomer Paul Cox has been known to get a little emotional during the moment of totality. He's not the only one, trust me. Why is that? Why do people get choked up when they witness an eclipse? Well, that's why our next guest is here. Dr. Kate Russo, and not only a clinical psychologist, but she too is an avid eclipse chaser. I want to be known as an eclipse chaser one of these years. It's something that can easily become an addiction. Kate, how long have you been chasing eclipses?
Hi. Well, I've been chasing eclipses since my very first one. So that's 18 years. It's a long time, but it actually feels like it's just become who I am now. So it's just a part of me.
Okay, that begs the question, why? What was it about that first one that got you hooked?
Well, I heard that you actually have seen a total solar eclipse yourself. So I guess you get it and you understand it, don't you? It's just such an amazing, emotional, overwhelming experience. Not only is it a celestial event that's pretty cool because you get to see the movement of the moon in front of the sun and you're standing in the shadow of the moon, but it's actually quite a physical, emotional, overwhelming experience. And it really does impact you. And we've been hearing people talk about the spirituality side of it, but I think it's just a human experience that there's some things in life that are just very emotional, very overwhelming. And as human beings, I think it's very hard for people not to be moved by a total solar eclipse. Now we've been sitting here watching the feed from the annular eclipse, and I must say I got really excited when the annularity hit, because I've got people on the ground there. My friends and eclipse chasing colleagues are on the ground, and I was almost like reliving what they would be. The moment of annularity is really exciting, and it's a culmination of all the days of traveling that they've done to get there. So it's pretty exciting. But the annular eclipse is not quite like a total solar eclipse, is it?
Well, no, it isn't. And especially in your case, because it literally was a life changer for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, and not just for me. I've spoken to many people. I've interviewed, ordinary, everyday people. I've interviewed astronomers and anyone. And it's a very small proportion of people will actually become completely addicted to eclipse chasing. Absolutely. But a majority of people will actually find it's one of the most moving experiences of their life. So I've very rarely come across anyone who has not been moved by a total solar eclipse. It can impact upon everybody, really.
I know it's impossible to answer this question because everybody is different, but what is it about totality that elicits such an emotional response?
I think it's big, we can understand the science of it and we can understand, what's happening, but it is one of those very rare moments that you can actually feel that you're in a massive universe, because, suddenly it's become three-dimensional because you're watching the objects that are out there. The moon is actually moving in front of the sun. So the dimensional aspect really becomes apparent. And you're standing in the shadow of the moon. And so you can't help but be completely struck by how vast and enormous our universe is. And with that, you feel very insignificant, but you also feel part of something much greater. And we feel very connected to humanity. We've talked a little bit about our primitive ancestors and how people in the past have experienced the eclipse. Well, there's still a part of us, even though we understand what's happening. There's a part of us that still respond in that very emotional way. And so it's something that allows us to think about our lives in a way that we don't usually. We think about ourselves that, we are just very small individuals on this very vast planet in this extremely vast universe. And so we feel connected to people around us. We feel connected to other cultures. We feel connected across time. We understand what our primitive ancestors would have felt like. So it's an incredibly moving moment. And it's one of these key moments in life that you actually start to think about. It's like life's turning points, I guess. And suddenly, like as a psychologist, I work with people who are experiencing very difficult emotional situations, and at the times of loss or bereavement, that there are other life turning points, really, aren't they? Where we start to think about what is it all about, what's important in life, and what choices shall I make to actually live a meaningful life. Well, a total eclipse is an event that we get that insight. So we don't actually have to experience a loss to be able to be reminded that our life is short, our life is precious. We need to actually get out and enjoy life while we can. So those are the turning points that we talk about, the transformational aspects that we talk about. It's like people suddenly understand or get that insight of, hey, the eclipse is short. This is a metaphor for life. We need to grab it with both hands. We need to make sure we live life to the full and do what's important to us. It's difficult to describe to people, but I think, when you experience it, it's like, yeah, I get it.
When you deal with things like that in your psychological studies and your research, is it imperative that someone witness a total eclipse to understand what you're talking about?
Well, I think people get that life's turning points situation. So I think we've all experienced loss and bereavement in our lives, haven't we? It's a common experience. And so I think people understand where, you know, we don't get caught up in the expectations or things that we have to do for other people. Those are the moments where we start to think, well, I need to do what's important for me, or life's, you know, what's important in life is the people around us, you know, being more in the moment, being present, and being true to what we want to do. So I think those are the things that are that come about. I think people who've experienced things like the aurora, and also, you know, storm chasers, tornado chasers, people who've seen rocket launches, those are the things that we feel in the presence of awe. So we feel something much more powerful than ourselves. And those are the other times that we can get this sense of insignificance and power of something completely bigger than what we are. But I think there's something unique about the total solar eclipse experience, because you do feel that awe, the power, the insignificance, but you also have that celestial feeling that universe is opening out in 3 dimensions. So it's something extremely powerful and hugely moving.
Kate, does it also have something to do with the closeness of what's happening? In other words, you can walk out on outside on a clear night and contemplate the vastness of the universe and see all the stars, etc., and planets. But it's another thing entirely, isn't it, to witness a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse and realize that these are our 2 closest neighbors in the solar system. Is it that closeness? Is that the difference?
I think it's more that it's immersive. So, do you know, those moments when we see a lunar eclipse or even a beautiful sunrise or a sunset, I mean, those moments are there for everybody to enjoy. But when a total solar eclipse happens, you know, the environment changes around you. It gets really quite, you know, the light changes, the temperature drops, the wind picks up or the wind drops. There's a creeping darkness towards you. So there's an immersive element to the environment. And so it happens above you, it happens around you, and also it happens within you. So I think that's what's different about a total solar eclipse. So I say that it's that, you know, the difference between seeing a lunar eclipse or, you know, a nice sunrise is that it's like the universe comes and slaps you in the face. You know, you can't ignore the fact that we're a part of this very, very big, vast universe. And it's almost like during totality, we get a little tiny glimpse into this whole way of being. You know, it's like a little insight. And every time us eclipse chasers see a total solar eclipse, it just brings us back to that feeling of, do you know, what a beautiful world it is, and how lucky we are to be here at this place, this point of time, right when everything is in alignment. And I think we have a saying, and you know, most eclipse chasers feel that the world would be a better place if everybody saw a total solar eclipse.
What kind of responses have you witnessed from people seeing a total solar eclipse for the first time?
Well, so many. I mean, I know my first one, I wasn't really expecting the emotional aspect of it at all. So I was completely thrown by the fact that, you know, my throat, I just couldn't speak, and I was so overwhelmed with emotion. There were people beside us with tears streaming down their eyes. Everyone was hugging because you feel very connected with people around you. You've just suddenly shared this huge, huge, powerful event, and you feel united with everybody, with humanity. So there is a lot of hugging, there's tears. And also, as soon as totality happens, it's like people shout out, and there's no there's no emotional or there's no social filters in what you're saying. So people will swear, they'll, you know, all sorts of things will come out because they're just not paying attention. They're just purely wrapped up in the moment. So it's a tremendous thing to see. And you see people get excited, they're jumping up and down. It's just pure adrenaline. And then I think what happens is that as totality progresses, people become a bit more hushed, and they're having an internal experience. They're really taking it on board, and they're really feeling in the moment, connected with what's happening around them. And then once totality is over, there's that overwhelming rush again. It's like, oh, it's over. There's a big buzz. You want to share it. Then there's this feeling of complete hollowness, and you think, when's the next one?
Well,
that's where the addiction comes from, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Will you be in the U.S. for the total eclipse in August?
Of course, of course. Every
Okay.
eclipse chaser will go to the total solar eclipses.
I just wanted to hear it.
Yeah, we've been on the countdown for this one for such a long time. And what's exciting about the eclipse in 27, well, the one in August now, is that it's so accessible to so many people. You know, in the past 18 years that I've been an eclipse chaser, we've had to travel around the world, lots of continents, lots of, you know, I've traveled by pirogues across oceans and seas and camels across deserts and, you know, all sorts of travel to get to where you need to get to. But this one in August, it's easily accessible to so many people. And I've been letting people know as often as I can that if you ever want to see a total solar eclipse, this is the one to go to because it's easy to get there. Many people go to the US, you can travel independently. You don't need to be part of a group. You just need to position yourself near to the path of totality. And then on eclipse day, you need to be in the path of totality, and that's all you need to do. You don't need anything else apart from that. You've got your filters to see the partial phases, but totality itself, you're just there and enjoying it. So it's just so accessible, and I just can't tell anyone enough that this is the one. You've got to get there. You've got to get there.
Well, it's a great plug. We will be there. We will be there. And
Yes.
finally, I got to be honest with you, Kate. Being an eclipse chaser, it sounds exhausting and it sounds expensive. Is it?
Well, it is, but you know, we all think about it that it's about priorities. So I think what happens with eclipse chasers is that we realize that this is a really important part of our lives. It's kind of like, it's not just a geeky thing. It's actually something that provides a lot of meaning and gives us a lot of passion in our lives as well. And so we realize it's really important to us. So instead of actually spending our money on material things, eclipse chasers will actually then spend what other people will spend on material things. We would spend that just on travel and experiences and just being a part of it. So it's probably no more expensive than what other people spend their money on other things. It's important to us, and we make it happen. And I think if there's something, you know, my first eclipse, I'd wanted to see one for a very long time, and it took me about 15 years before I saw my first one. But once I saw one, then I know I'm going to see every one of them. And there's one that I had to miss out because it was too expensive, and that was to Antarctica. So sometimes there's just, yeah, sometimes it's just beyond us. But, you know, if you're determined enough, you'll make it happen. You really will.
Well, I'm a nature photographer when I'm not doing this, and that's one of the ones I wish I had been able to go to. Antarctica sounds like that's a bucket list item for me.
Yep.
Well,
Absolutely.
listen, Kate, I hope to see you in Idaho in August. Okay.
Yes, I'll be up the road. So I'll be doing lots of promotion and lots of, I've been helping communities prepare across the path of totality. So I guess if you're interested in what I'm doing, just make sure to follow me on Facebook. That's the important thing. But we're just across the mountains from you. So hopefully we'll both have clear skies and we'll be able to talk again about what that was like for you as your second total solar eclipse.
Excellent. Dr. Kate Russo, thanks a million. It's been fascinating.
Excellent. Okay. Enjoy the rest of the program.
All right, cheers. Dr. Kate Russo, eclipse chaser extraordinaire, clinical psychologist, and author of two fascinating eclipse books, Total Addiction, The Life of an Eclipse Chaser, and Totality, the Total Solar Eclipse of 2012. As we check out the shot from Chile, we see the moon moving away from the face of the sun now, and coming up here on the show, if you're hoping to catch next summer's total solar eclipse here in the U.S., SLU astronomer Paul Cox has some tips for the best way to do so. And later, this eclipse is on its way across the ocean to Africa. We've got a man on the scene in Angola. Graham Jones will be joining us to talk about his experience traveling the globe to witness these incredible events. So please stay right where you are. as we expedition to Stanley, Idaho, to celebrate the transcontinental eclipse on August 21st. Sign up today at slew.com. Space is limited. Hi there. Welcome back to our Southern Ring of Fire presentation here on SLU, Space for Everyone. I'm your host, Jerry Monteux. So happy you could join us for this annular solar eclipse. And if you've been watching this spectacle, and I certainly hope you have been, and you're thinking of taking in an eclipse for yourself, well, you're going to need to be prepared. Trust me on this one. To help us figure out exactly what we need, we're going to welcome back our SLU astronomer and friend, Paul Cox. And Paul, before we get into the preparation side of things, we haven't spoken with you since we saw the Ring of Fire. I got to tell you, man, I was blown away. Were you?
I know. I mean, you're doing a sterling job there. It was so cool, Jerry. I mean, it was better actually than I was even hoping for. And the guys down in Chile have done a fabulous job for us, Daniela Fernandez and Carlos Milovic. But we also need to thank Leonardo Vanzi. He's from the Center of Astroengineering at the Catholic University. And of course, we partner with the Catholic University. That's where SLU's Southern Hemisphere telescopes are based. But they've done a great job. We've also been watching those brilliant images coming in from Argentina as well, from the Foundation, Friends of Astronomy there. And we've had that Uruguay Montevideo video feed in Uruguay, and that's looked pretty damn cool as well. But you've done a great job, absolutely great job.
Well, believe me, this is a labor of love. I've never witnessed anything like this. Look, I would have been happy with what we see on the screen right now from, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Coyhaique. Okay, in Chile. I would have been happy with that, Paul. That's gorgeous.
I know, and the weather stayed good for us as well down there. You know, there was a 60% chance that they were going to be clouded out down there in the south of Chile. And also, what people don't understand is this is so far south in Chile that actually a town is kind of only a few thousand people, and there aren't really, you know, huge internet services down there. So we've fitted ourselves up with a great internet service. We even had some mobile service as background coverage. The fact that we pulled this off today, Jerry, is testament to the work of everybody at SLU. You know, these are not easy events to pull off, that's for sure.
Yeah, I really wish everyone knew exactly how much work is involved in something like this. What they see here is the end product, but they have no idea what went into it. All right, Paul, let's talk about the basic do's and don'ts when viewing an eclipse.
Okay, well, we'll talk maybe in this conversation a little bit more about eye protection and where to see the transcontinental eclipse. Because really, I'd like to give only one answer to this particular question, Jerry. What are the basic do's and don'ts? There is one don't. Never, ever look at the sun, even an annular phase of an eclipse, with naked eyes, without eye protection. Even that annular eclipse, if people had taken off their eclipse glasses and watched it at the annular phase, they won't know it, but they will have damaged their retina. And the problem is with this kind of damage to your eyes, you don't feel any pain, Jerry. And it's usually only a couple of hours after that suddenly you realize something's wrong. So that is the only thing to take home. If you don't take anything else home about viewing an eclipse, it's never, ever look at the sun with naked eyes.
For a split second, Paul, you can't look at an annular eclipse even for a split second?
No, the only part of an eclipse, of any eclipse that you can look at, solar eclipse, is totality. And then you have to be very careful that you only look at it at totality, and that's when you see the beautiful corona on all these fingers, the outer atmosphere of the sun kind of carved and sculpted by the sun's magnetic fields. But no, not even an annular phase, you never look at that, because there's still so much. You know, our view here actually, Jerry, is through a highly filtered specialist solar telescope. And, you know, that cuts down such a lot of light. But if you'd been looking at that annular eclipse just in the sky without protection, it actually would have still looked like a bright sun.
Okay, so you've spoken of eclipse glasses. Where does one procure a pair of eclipse glasses?
Well, you know, there are loads of eclipse glasses out there, but I know this might come across as a bit of a sales pitch, but it's not. Most eclipse glasses that you see people wearing are those cardboard jobs that you see, and they are so uncomfortable. It's always quite tempting to take them off, and they fall away and they're easy to damage. But these are the things that people need. And this is not, please, this is not a sales pitch. These glasses look like normal sunglasses, don't they? They are in a plastic frame, a rugged plastic frame, but the material that's in them is special solar material. I cannot see a thing now, but they stay
But you look
on
cool.
their
I got to tell you, man, you look cool as hell.
Thank you very much. But even though I couldn't see a thing, but these are really comfortable. These are actually a limited edition from SLU. People can buy these on the SLU website. If you're going to see the transcontinental eclipse in the USA, if you have a pair of these, I would highly recommend them. And the other thing, Jerry, with solar glasses is people do keep them in a drawer or something like that. You have to test them, whether or not it's this kind or whether or not it's the cardboard kind. Test them before you use them. And the way of doing that is to hold them very close, kind of be looking at them through this, and be looking at an incandescent light bulb. And if there's the slightest little pinprick, you'll see it. And one pinprick would be enough to let sufficient sunlight through to damage your eyes. We really can't stress, you know, how I think I damaged my eyes actually in 2004 with the transit of Venus. There was a pinhole in the special filter I was using on my telescope, and after that there's an odd thing in my right eye, which is the one that I was using to look through the eyepiece.
Wow, that is frightening and excellent advice. Okay, as you know, in my other life, I'm a photographer. Can you photograph an eclipse?
You can, you know, and it's one of the biggest differences between an annular eclipse or partial eclipse and a total solar eclipse. With an annular phase or partial eclipse, you have to keep a special filter over your camera lens for the duration, just like you do for naked eyes. And that doesn't matter whether or not you're using a camera lens or you've connected your, say, DSLR camera up to a telescope using what's called a T-piece, which is really simple to do, and it's great fun to do it as well. But a total solar eclipse, like the transcontinental eclipse later this year, my word, that is so nerve-wracking and hectic, because you have to be filtered during all of the partial phases. But then the moment comes and you might only have seconds or maybe a minute or two of totality, and you have to remove whatever filter you've got on the front of your camera or telescope. You have to adjust the exposure settings to take those glorious images of totality that we see with that wispy corona going all over it. So photographing a total solar eclipse, I would say only do it if you're providing a feed for SLU's events. If you're in the USA, I would totally recommend that people just take in that whole experience with their naked eyes. You know, it's just as Dr. Kate Russo was saying, you make this, I challenge anybody not to be profoundly emotionally and spiritually touched by witnessing a total solar eclipse. And the only ones I've seen, Jerry, I've been usually broadcasting a SLU show from Kenya where the actual eclipse was happening behind me. I'm also trying to control telescopes and cameras and all sorts of things. So I very rarely have ever got to fully witness a total solar eclipse myself. But you've seen, for those fractions of a second, I've just been so emotionally affected by it. It's the most extraordinary thing I have ever experienced in my life, a total solar eclipse. So don't photograph it, witness it yourself with your own eyes, with your family and friends. That's the way to see the transcontinental eclipse later this year.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you, Paul. Around the office, you're not known as a very emotional guy, but
I'm not.
but in that case, it really did a number on you, didn't it?
I know. I'm an absolute ice block normally. I have no spiritualism. I have no soul. I'm robotic. I'm cold. But when it comes to a total solar eclipse, I'm in tears. It really is. I mean, a lot of it, I've tried to think about why it affects us. And I've spoken to Dr. Kate Russo about the psychological reasons for this. And, I started wondering, well, was it that we've been traveling for 4 days across Kenya in 4x4s? We haven't slept for, 72 hours. We've been caught in a dust storm minutes before the eclipse was due to start. Was all of that, the tiredness, the fatigue, the emotion, is that what generated it? But no, we went to the Indonesian eclipse last year, and that was a lot more relaxed. And I looked up and saw totality and immediately was choked, totally choked. So I'm not the best person to have hosting an eclipse show, because I'm just gonna freeze when it comes to totality.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that on camera in Idaho. I want to see Paul
Okay.
Cox crying in Idaho on August 21st. Paul, thanks a million. Appreciate it as always. Wonderful stuff.
Thank you.
All right. SLU astronomer and our friend Paul Cox. And by the way, that was a great plug. And you can pick up your special eclipse glasses simply by clicking the Shop Now button here on SLU.com. All right, coming up, this eclipse might be wrapping up in Chile. Indeed, it is, but it hasn't even begun in Angola. We'll be talking to an educator on the ground in the African nation about his work and the eclipse excitement over there. So please stay with us.